Okay, in this video I just want to show you how to make a simple cookie cutter that is kind of in the shape of a face. This is what I made. I'm going to show you how to basically make the basic shape of a face or of a head, and then how to add the details like I did. And you see, I kind of made a simple smiley face. If I spent more time on this, I might add more detail and play around with it, but this is just a my first go at it. So I'm just going to move this to the side, and I'm going to show you how I did this. The first thing to note, when you're making a cookie cutter, it is much easier if you keep the shape roughly with these kind of dimensions, where the let's say the x-axis and the y-axis dimensions are more or less equal. As soon as you get to more complicated and elongated shapes like this, with intricate details, it becomes a little more complicated when you start duplicating and trying to create basically this wall here, the cutter. I call that the cutter part. So this cutter part, it becomes a little more difficult to do that, and it becomes more difficult to create a base the way I have as well. So I find a shape like this, which is kind of circular with some angles in it, but it's roughly follows a kind of a circular symmetrical shape. I find that works really well. So what I did is I start by basically what is called blocking, and that's basically figuring out the main shapes, the primary shapes of whatever it is you're making. And when I think of a face, I think of a sphere and with maybe something like a polygon underneath it. I think of two basic shapes, in other words. So I'm going to add that like that, kind of like that, and that's kind of the chin. That's kind of what I think of. The first thing you might want to do, and I didn't do that, is change the snapping grid so that your movements are a little more precise. And I'm going to just adjust things. I'm going to make the head a little more elongated. Okay, now that is really tall, and I don't need it to be that tall. I'm going to adjust the total height here. I want, when you're making your cookie cutters, I would like the height of your bases, this is the base, to be at 3 millimeters. I think that's a good height. There, something like that. Next, what I did with that top one is I basically wanted to add some texture and some regular shapes just to make it look like it had a hair pattern. Now, depending on what kind of hairdo you want your avatar cookie cutter to have, it's up to you. Let's say you want to give it kind of a swoosh, like a hipster swoosh. So let's see if I have something that kind of resembles that. Maybe, you know what, maybe another one of these spheres. You can always change the color of objects so you don't get confused with what you're grabbing. The color doesn't make any difference though when you 3D print. It'll all 3D, the color that it 3D prints in just totally depends on what spool of plastic is in the 3D printer. So the color in your actual design, your Tinkercad model, is not really relevant. It's just personal preference, basically. So I'm trying to do a little swoosh here. Maybe something like a pompadour or something like that. I'm actually going to duplicate this by clicking the duplicate button, because I'm going to do the other side here. Slightly smaller swoosh. I'm holding down Shift so that the shape shrinks proportionately, unilaterally. There you go. You can see it's kind of like a kind of a Conan O'Brien kind of style here. If you don't know who Conan O'Brien is, look him up. Okay. Alright, now I'm just going to go here and adjust the height to 3. And I think this height is already at 3, yeah. Okay. And that looks pretty good. I'm liking that. So again, what I'm looking at right now is just the basic outside shape. Now, if you don't like, now you can kind of, I've blocked it out basically, and it's up to you how much detail you want to add to it. But I might want to round out the chin a little bit. I don't need it to be that square. Again, if you want it to be square, that's totally fine. It doesn't have to be a realistic face shape. It can be kind of a stylized shape. So I'm going to go in there and kind of do this. Actually, before we do that, I'm going to see if something else is an option. There are these manipulation options here on the shape. And there are things you can do, like I'm increasing the number of sides in that shape. And bevels. Okay. I'm going to try to undo what I just did. Segments. Interesting. What did that do? What did that do? I'm not sure what that did. Okay. So let's leave that. That didn't do anything that I wanted it to do. So I'm going to bring this square here. I'm going to put it right up against here. Basically going to chip away at this a little bit. I want to give it a rounded sort of edge. You know what? Maybe instead of using a square, I've changed my mind. I'm going to grab a donut. Let's see if I can change the shape of the donut. Okay, that's good. Make it a little bit bigger there. Yeah, a lot of steps is good. Okay, so we're smoothing it out there. Okay, what I'm going to do is basically cut this donut in half. And I'm going to use half of it as a tool to carve out on the sides here. So I'm going to group that. So there's two ways to group. You can select them both with your left finger click on the mouse, left mouse button, or you can individually select things. Click one thing, hold down Shift, and click the other objects that you want to co-select. Then it'll tell you how many are selected, and you can group them using this button. And there we go. I have my shape. I'm going to rotate it now, turn it into a hole, because I want it to basically do a subtractive thing. Actually, I'm going to make it a solid again. I realize I need to cut a little bit more off here, so let's do that. Here, and let's do this here. Okay, select that, that, and that. 3 shapes, group them. Okay, there we go. It's a little bit better, but it's still kind of in the way. Let's see if I can enlarge it. I'm just getting an email flurry there, aren't I? All right. Okay, that's doesn't look that pretty, but let's see how that works. Oh, look at that. Sometimes stuff like this happens. I notice it's beneath. And I don't want it beneath like that. I'm going to stretch it out here. Thing I'm noticing, it's this shape is not what I want actually. So you know what? I'm going to scrap all that. And I'm going to use this square after all. So it is about trial and error a lot of the times, and I was trying something out there and I realized it's not going to work the way I wanted to. So I'm going to go back to this, and then I'm going to basically carve out a little chip here, and do the same thing on the other side. Now, to do the same thing on the other side, you can, a little trick is you can duplicate this shape. I'm going to get it where I want it here first. Let's try that. Duplicate the shape, and then click this flip button in the mirror, and then with the duplicated thing that you just made, hold down Shift and you can drag it across to the other side here, like so. And holding down Shift basically allows you to lock the movement of your object to just one dimension, one axis, so that you're less likely to move it and kind of mess up its placement. There you go. Let's do this. Let's group this, this, and this. See if we can get a nice jaw shape there. There, that's a little better. And if you want, you could repeat the steps and try to add a few more angles to it. But I'm happy with that. Kind of does look like a Conan O'Brien. In fact, I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make Conan O'Brien. Maybe one more thing I might do to my Conan here is could carve out a little piece here just so that it's not so rounded on the side. And I'll duplicate that, and maybe I'll bring that to the other side too. Well, I guess it doesn't really matter. Hold down Shift, drag it across. Okay, I'm gonna have to, I don't want to cut off his hair, so I'm gonna have to replace this. Maybe something like that. Okay, let's try that. Group. In fact, I'm gonna group all of it now. Let's see how it looks like. You can always undo if it doesn't look good. See there, it chipped a little bit out of here that I don't want. So maybe what I'll do is like that. Extend this down. Okay, maybe bring this one closer too. There you go. Let's try that again. See if that looks better. There you go. That's all right. So now I have my base. Once you've basically figured out the basic shape of your cookie cutter, things go a lot faster. The next step is I want to create the cutter part. So I'm going to duplicate that, and then I'm going to raise the part that I just duplicated. I'm going to raise it to about 13. Then I'm going to click on one of these white boxes because I want to change the overall shape. If you click on the black box, you're just changing it in one dimension. You can't do up and down. Or you can do up and down, but you can't do up and down and left and right at the same time. In order to do up and down and left and right, you got to do these white boxes, and that allows you to do that. But I want to change it uniformly to keep the proportion, so I hold down the Shift button before I grab onto the box, the white box. And now I can position it. And I want to position it in such a way that there's a little bit poking out everywhere. And that'll be the base of my cutter. And that's not perfect, but that's good enough for the purposes of this video. I'm going to duplicate this again because I need to do that to make a hole. I'm going to create the hole. And the hole is going to carve out. I'm going to hold down Shift. Again, do the same thing. I'm going to create basically the cutter part now. I'd like it to be about 3 millimeters all around. Don't want it too thin because if it prints out too thin, it's in danger of snapping. It's not very stable. So and I think that's fairly good. Yeah. Now, I'm going to make sure that this hole doesn't go all the way to the ground. I'm going to lift it up 3 millimeters, and that's important because I want the base to be 3 millimeters all around because I'm going to add detail to this Conan O'Brien. I'm going to group it, and there you go. I have the basic outline of a cookie cutter. It kind of looks like a mitten. It's supposed to be Conan O'Brien's head. But then, you know, I'll add detail to it. Now, Before I do that, let's make sure I got the dimensions right. I'm going to actually undo, make sure I got the base. Was that at 3? Yep. The height of this, okay, let's make it 12, although 12.4 is fine. And then let's group it again. There you go. Now the last part can be a really fun part, and that's where you add the details. Now there's different ways you can do this, but the basic idea is, just like you see here, you want to make sure that whatever the details are, that they don't rise up as high as the wall of your cutter. Because if they do, then basically you'll just be cutting separate bits of cookie out. And you don't want to do that. You just want to basically imprint a texture design. You want to imprint a face. You want to imprint the details. You don't want to cut out the details. So what I use there is the scribble. So you can drag the scribble button, and it has this little picture on the top right to see where your object thing is turning out. And what I would do is pick one facial feature at a time. So if you want to focus on the eye first, you can do that. And I'm going to just make a very simple smiley face kind of eye. You can see how big that is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to X out of here. Click done. I'm going to move this out. I'm going to delete that. I'm going to make this actually bigger. And because I did that, I need to ungroup and make sure the dimensions are accurate again. So because I made it bigger, this changed. So I'm going to drop that down to 3 again. Okay, it's bouncing around here. Let me change the snap grid. Oops. There we go. And I'm going to change this wall to 12. It's up to 20. There we go. And make sure that this is still 3 millimeters off from the bottom. There. Now I'm going to regroup again. Now I'm going to bring that scribble tool over here. And now when I make an eye, there, the proportions are a little nicer. So I'm going to click done. Basically, I'm just going to go and try to place it in here. And the great thing is I can just change the size of it like that, rotate it, and get it exactly where I like. That's basically what I did with my other character there. And I might shrink it a little bit. And I can duplicate it and bring the other eye here. Well, my class is back, so I'm going to let you go there. But that's basically how you add detail, and you can keep going in and keep bringing in extra scribbles to continue adding to this shape. You know, so there's the beginning of a nose. So anyways, hope you guys have fun with that, and I will let you go.